Elsa and Adesola, I'm not sure if you wanted to turn on your mics and if you have any questions, given that your work is so similar in some ways, even though it's in a very different context. Feel free to jump in with any questions you might have.
Do you have any?
No.
Okay, so first we want to say a big hi and thanks to our brothers and sisters in India. It's always nice when we start and have others affiliates of SDI. It's always nice to have someone who can lay the ground of our work and how we function. Shola was taking notes when you were doing your presentation. I think he's bringing a lot of idea of how we can localize the work you've been doing in India, here in Nigeria. And we know how India Alliance has been one of the historic alliances in SDI and how strong you've been and the amount of work you've been doing. So we just want to say a big umeme. I think you shared this as well as part of the SDI. So we just want to say umeme and we are happy to be with you today.
Thank you so much.
Vinod and Selvi, can I ask you to talk a little bit more about how you operationalize some of this massive data collection and response that you've done over the last year? You said that you identified 1,500 households in need of food and you mobilized food. What does that look like in terms of data collection? You also said that you coordinated with local governments or authorities as well. So did you call up, is there a network of phone calls that happened? Who are you connected with that is able to prepare food and distribute it? Can you talk more about those details?
I'll just explain it to Selvi. I think there are certain points that you've asked, actually Selvi had already answered, and I think I missed saying that. But I'm just going to say that to Selvi in a minute and come back to you. Selvi वो पूछ रही है कि आपने अभी 1500 लोगों को मदद किया था, तो ये आपको नंबर कैसे मिला? वो मैं बता दूंगा क्योंकि आपने बताया था कि आपने सोसाइटी से लिस्ट लेके किया था, तो वो मैं एक्सप्लेन कर दूंगा। दूसरी बात वो पूछ रही है कि बीएमसी से, कॉर्पोरेट से, सब जैसे आपने ये सब अरेंजमेंट्स करवाया, तो ये अरेंजमेंट्स कैसे हुआ? मतलब क्या आपके कनेक्शंस थे या आपको कोई ऐसा पावर है जिससे आप उनको बता सकते हैं, वो कैसे हुआ? तो वो पार्ट आप बता देंगी तो फिर मैं उसको और पहले वाले को जोड़ के उनको बता दूंगी।
मैं यहाँ पे आई तो मुझे एक पावर की जरूरत थी, जैसा एक महिला मिलन का पावर मिला है, वैसा मुझे लगा कि यहाँ पे एक पॉलिटिशियन जो जिसका चलता है, जैसा एमएलए हो गए, जैसा नगर सेवक हो गया, तो हम उनके भी कॉन्टेक्ट रखे, क्योंकि यहाँ की पब्लिक का काम करना है तो मुझे कॉन्टेक्ट चाहिए। और मैं बीएमसी, यहाँ की चौकी, तो इन लोगों को सबको हमको जोड़ के चलेंगे जब हम पब्लिक का काम करेंगे। तो हमारी हर जगह मीटिंग होती थी, हम खुद जाके मिलते थे कि हमारी यहाँ एक संस्था है, हमको इस जरिए इस तरह से हमारे यहाँ पे इतनी पब्लिक है, तो यहाँ पे हमारे लिए कुछ भी अगर मदद रहेगा आपको हमारे बोलने पे इनकी करना है। तो वहाँ पे मुझे पार्टी में एक बड़ा लेवल मिला है, जहाँ यहाँ की एक समाजवादी पार्टी है, तो वहाँ पे उन्होंने मुझे एक बड़ा पोस्ट दिया, जो पोस्ट का नाम है वार्ड अध्यक्ष। वार्ड अध्यक्ष बोले तो हमारे पूरे जितने वार्ड के जैसा एक चेयरमैन, तो मुझे इसलिए हमारे सुनते कि हर जगह बताया जाता है ये वहाँ की मेन है, ये लोगों के संपर्क में है, ये लोगों के अच्छे बुरे इनको सब मालूमात है, ये कौन सी बिल्डिंग में क्या सोसाइटी में किसका क्या हालत है, इनसे आप पूछो, ये पूरा डिटेल आपको देंगे। तो उस तरह से हमारे लोग सुनते कि उनको मालूम है ये सोशल फील्ड में बहुत आगे है और ये लोगों की मदद करने वाले में से लोग है, इसके लिए हमारा सुन के लोगों की मदद करते।
Thank you, Selvi. Two-part answer. I think the first part is on how do you do that data collection process. So what Selvi said, and what has also happened in most of the relocation colonies, is that you do have sort of registered entities there called societies. And so a society would be for a building, say about 100 family, 100 apartment blocks. So each apartment block on an average of one family. So about 100 families, you would have an association. And this association is in very close contact with the residents because, there's a monthly maintenance money that everybody contributes towards the maintenance, say water and taxes, etc. So what Selvi and the other leaders in different areas did was ask the society members to identify families that are at the most vulnerable situation right now are probably not even getting a single meal because they earn on an everyday basis. She's talking about two types of people. One is people who live in Bombay and who've been living for a very long time, but they still live on daily kind of jobs that pay them. And if they don't earn that day, they won't be able to afford a meal for that day. And 21 days is such a long time. So they actually started this mobilization just in 5-6 days when they started getting distress calls from people that people are going hungry. So the data collection as such was by asking individual society to lead and give a list of families who need to be given everyday food. Also families who would rather appreciate dry food grains that they would like to cook themselves on. The cooking of that was communal. A lot of foundations as well as political foundations linked to political parties that actually set up large community kitchens, and food was being sent to different parts. On your second question about how do you get access to these, is that Selvi herself is one of the political leaders. So she doesn't stand for elections. She doesn't get elected, but she works for a political party, local political party, and she feels it's important because she says that they are the first line of defense if you want to get things done. And it's not that you start building these relationships when you have a crisis, but you have to build relationships with the local political leadership, because the officials keep changing, but local political leaderships are around for at least 5 years during their tenure. And so she feels that relationship is imperative if you want to get things done in their area. And Selvi has a very important post in that party of a very large geography within the area that she lives. She's been able to leverage that in order to get access to the large amount of food that was mobilized.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And it's really great to hear about being kind of embedded in a local political party well before any of the COVID crisis hit, because it's something that you have to draw on, and it takes time to build those relationships, doesn't it? I have another question that is about the Know Your City campaign website. Is that a website that you all use or contribute to?
Yes and no, both. So the Know Your City, activity that we've been doing for citywide mapping and citywide data collection, and that was done sometime in the past. We've not been doing that in the last 5 years or so. There are other SDI affiliates which have actually done much more of that work. Like I said, because one of the things that, Spark was set up in 1984. And a lot of these activities of establishing the fact that you do have so many slums and cities, etc., was a part of activity that was done during those times. And all Indian cities today have more or less, at least the larger cities have more or less very detailed amount of data. It's only a matter of them acknowledging and are not acknowledging it. So we are and we are not both of the Know Your City campaign work.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'll put a link to the website in the chat window in just a minute, but as a researcher, I find it it's just a hugely valuable data set because it's produced collectively by thousands of community data collection groups. And when that data is put into one place in a semi-standardized format, it becomes quite useful for broader research and kind of policy questions. And so I think it's a wonderful resource, but it clearly goes in one direction. The information flows from communities to the open data community itself. I'm wondering, maybe it wouldn't be through Know Your City campaign website, but if there was a kind of platform for data to go back to communities, what kind of data would be useful on that kind of platform? Say academic communities who have access to remotely sensed data that can tell us about flood zones or temperature spikes or land cover issues, or even things like, building footprints as they're derived from satellite imagery or something like this. Is there any need for data coming back to communities? And that would be a question for you and for Selvi.
Yes, yes. I'll just give a brief about that, and then I will ask Selvi. There is, but the way in which data comes back to the communities will have to be different. I think the federation, as a larger network, takes interest in looking at the city as a whole. But a lot of the leadership within localities are much more interested in what's happening within the smaller geography, because I think the scale of informality is just way too large for everybody to look at all of it. So I'm going to ask this to Selvi of how does she think data should be presented back to her about her own community, for example. Selvi वो पूछ रहे हैं कि बहुत सारे लोग डेटा लेते हैं, सर्वे करते हैं, डेटा लेते हैं, लेकिन फिर वो फिर से लोगों के पास तो नहीं आता है. अगर लोगों के पास वो डेटा आना है, जैसे आप अगर इंडियन ऑयल में रहते हो, तो समझो इंडियन ऑयल में डेटा अगर लेते हैं, सर्वे करते हैं कुछ डेटा का, तो वो सर्वे का डेटा फिर से इंडियन ऑयल में कैसे आना चाहिए, किस तरीके से आना चाहिए?
विनोद भाई नहीं समझी
आप? नहीं, अभी जो सर्वे करते हैं ना, तो सर्वे करने के बाद अभी समझो कोई आया बाहर से, सर्वे किया आपके यहाँ पे, वो डेटा आपके पास से लेके चले गए और उसका कुछ कहीं पे डाल दिया, तो आपको तो वो नहीं पता चलेगा शायद जो बच्चे इंटरनेट देखते वो शायद देखेंगे, लेकिन अगर समझो कि कोई डेटा लेता है इंडियन ऑयल का, तो फिर और इंडियन ऑयल के ही यूज के लिए डेटा लिया है, तो इंडियन ऑयल में फिर से अगर आके उनको डेटा देना है, तो किस तरीके से देना चाहिए ऐसे आपको लगता है? आपको जो लगता है वो बताइए.
हाँ, बराबर. जैसा हम लोगों की मालूमात लेके गए, फिर वो किस तरीके से इधर मदद करने आ रहे हो या किस तरीके से वो देने आ रहे हो, उसके ऊपर बात करना है ना.
हाँ.
तो हुआ विनोद भाई, ऐसा कुछ लोगों ने जो यहाँ से डेटा लेके गए, जैसा लॉकडाउन में मैंने अकेली नहीं मदद किया, और भी लोग यहाँ पे आके जो सर्वे करके डेटा लेके गए, कुछ लोग ध्यान नहीं दिए, लेकिन कुछ लोग उसके ऊपर ध्यान दिए. हम लोगों को उसके ऊपर मेडिसिन मिला, जो वार्ड से ना, जो एक आयुर्वेदिक का एक गोली मिला हम लोगों को, जो हमारा जो डेटा लेके गए थे.
नहीं सेल्वी, वो दवाई का नहीं मैं बोल रहा हूँ. तो समझो सर्वे अभी हम लोग जैसा हेल्थ का सर्वे करते हैं, शायद इंडियन ऑयल में उतना सर्वे हुआ नहीं है, लेकिन समझो कोई किसी भी चीज का एकदम डीप पढ़ाई करने का कोई अगर सर्वे करता है, तो वो सर्वे का डेटा मैप लगाता है, समझो कोई इंडियन ऑयल का, तो वो किस तरीके से आपको यूजफुल रहेगा? वापस से आएंगे तो बताना ही है, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है सेल्वी.
तो मुझे कुछ समझ में नहीं आया.
समझ में नहीं आया. अच्छा ठीक है, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. No, I'm not able to convert it into a question for Selvi of how a data would be helpful for her to kind of take it, use it. But one of the things which has helped in the past and that we've done is to present the data back to the community in a way in which they would understand, in simple presentations, pictorial formats, and kind of help, because one of the things that we do in our data collection, if you've seen, is ask for priority issues. And say if there are 5 priority issues that people list on a ranking basis, we go back to the communities and say that, this is what has been listed as the priority within your area. And so how do you take that up, and how do you want to reprioritize this? Does it seem to be fine? You said you have 500 households, but if you collected, you actually have 700 households. What is the issue with it? And then comes the situation that they say, no, those 200 households are not in any surveys, they're not supposed to be included. So there are these layers of different issues that the data tells you when you go back and take this to communities. And I think that dialogue that we do, so it's much less in a physical format. We do use like maps and things like that in the offices, but it's much less in the physical format, but more in the form of oral communication and discussions that in our experience, communities have found very, very useful to take forward, at least in many of the communities in India.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for your presentation time and discussion today.